Today we're going to be learning about two types of lines. The first line is going to be lines that are parallel. We can tell that lines are parallel from the equation because they are going to have the same slopes. Okay, so for example, if we had this line right here, y equals 2/3 x minus 4, we would know that the slope of a parallel line would need to be the same of the slope of this line. So the slope would have to also be 2/3 in order for the two lines to be parallel. If we look at number 2, we can say, okay, we don't know what the slope is because this line is in standard form. I know that the line is in standard form because the x comes first. So in order to find out what the slope is, I'm going to need to get y by itself. In order to do that, I'm going to need to subtract 6x, subtract 6x, okay? I end up with negative y equals negative 6x plus 10. And then I have to divide both sides by negative 1. Okay. And negative y divided by negative 1 is going to be positive y. Negative 6 divided by negative 1 is going to be positive 6x. And then 10 divided by negative 1 will be negative 10. Okay, so the slope of our line here is going to be 6. So if we would like to do the slope of a parallel line, it needs to also be 6. Okay, looking at number 3, okay, it has an equation that says x equals, okay, x equals negative 2. So if we remember from our slope man, he has an undefined nose with a little x. That's his nose piercing, right? And then he has a horizontal mouth with a 0 slope and his y tongue sticking out. Okay, the reason that he has his little nose piercing of x is because equations that just have x's, x equals negative 2, those are going to be vertical lines. And as we can see from our slope man, the slope of a vertical line is undefined. So in order to do the line, draw a line that's parallel to this one, the slope would also need to be undefined. Okay, so let's look at a few examples of writing equations of parallel lines. As you can see here, we're given a line, we're also given a point. So we are going to need to write the equation of the line that's parallel to the red line and goes through the black point. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do right now, parallel to the red line that passes through the black point. Now we are going to need this to write it in point slope form. Okay, because we're going to be given a point and we can find out what the slope needs to be from the red line. Okay, so here our point is going to be negative 2, 2. Okay, and that's going to give us our x1 and our y1 that we need, right? Our slope is going to be equal to the slope of this red line. So I need to find two perfect points on the red line and then track what the rise over run is going to be. So let's do that here in orange. Okay, and I need to go up 3 boxes and right 1. So that's going to give me a slope of 3. Okay, you could use 3 over 1, but 3 is most simplified. So I'm going to use the x1, the y1, and the m to write my equation in point slope form. Okay, so y minus my y1 is 2, okay, equals 3 times x, and then this would be minus negative 2. My x1 is negative 2. Then the most simplified way to write that is going to be a plus. Okay, let's go down to the next example. Okay, again, I'm trying to write the equation of a line that goes through this black point, okay, which is 2, negative 2, and has a slope that's parallel to this line. Okay, it has to have the same slope to be parallel. So if I look at the slope of this line, okay, I can see my slope is going to be 1 over 2 because I need to go up 1 to the right 2. Okay, so this is going to be my x1, my y1, and then I have my m. So I'm going to use my point slope formula because that's what I have. And I can fill those in, okay? Y plus 2 equals 1/2 times x minus 2. Then as our last example, okay, we are going to have to go through -2, -2 as my x1 and my y1, okay? And then the slope is going to be, looks like -1/4. Okay, so my equation y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, right? Y plus 2 equals -1/4 times x plus 2. Okay, now we're going to talk about a different kind of line. Okay, on the back of these notes, we can see that we have a different type of line also. Okay, is perpendicular. Okay, first off, what are perpendicular lines? Okay, perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at a right. What I mean when I say right is 90 degrees at a right angle. Okay, so perpendicular lines have opposite, reciprocal slopes. Okay, when I'm talking about opposite, I'm talking about the sign. So if our slope is positive of the first line, our perpendicular slope is going to be negative, and then vice versa. If it's negative, it's going to be positive. Reciprocal is supposed to be reciprocal. Okay, reciprocal is going to be you flip the fraction. Okay, you flip the fraction in order to have the reciprocal slope. Okay, so for example, if I had, let's say, 2/3 as my original slope, I would have -3/2 as my perpendicular slope. Okay, so I need to flip my sign and I need to flip my fraction. Okay, those two steps are going to allow us to find the perpendicular slope. Flip the sign, flip the fraction. Okay, so for example, if I look here, okay, what would be the perpendicular to y equals -2x? Well, my first slope is -2, okay? And just like we did before when we were graphing lines, if we don't have this as a fraction, we are going to put it over 1. Now, in my perpendicular slope, okay, my answer slope, I'm going to need to flip the sign, so my answer is going to be positive, and then flip my fraction, so I'm going to have my 1 on my top, my 2 on the bottom, okay? So the opposite of -2 is +1/2, okay? We look at the next one. This is in standard form. We know that it's in standard form because the x comes first. Okay, in order to change this from standard form, we need to get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides, and I end up with -5y equals -4x plus 12. And then I'm going to divide everything by -5. Okay, y equals a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, 12 is not divisible by x, so I'm going to leave that as a fraction. Okay, well, it needs to be minus, sorry. Minus 12/5. Okay, so the slope of my original line is 4 over 5. The slope of my perpendicular line, okay, is going to have to be negative because this one is positive, so my answer needs to be negative. I have to flip my sign. I also need to flip my fraction. So this 4 is going to go to the bottom, and then my 5 is going to go to the top. So my answer for my um, perpendicular slope will be negative 5 over 4. Okay. In my last example, I have y equals 7. So if you remember again from our slope guy, he has a positive eye, a negative eye, an undefined nose with his little X nose piercing, a 0 mouth with his Y tongue sticking out, okay? This Y tongue sticking out is where this slope comes from, okay? So this Y tongue, this means that the slope here is 0, okay? The slope of the original line is 0. Now, in order to be perpendicular to 0, it's going to need to be a vertical line, okay? What is the slope of a vertical line, right? And we know that that is going to be undefined, just like his vertical nose, okay? So that would be the opposite reciprocal here is going to be undefined. Now let's take a look at these few graphs. Okay, so again, I'm going to need to write the equation in point slope form that is perpendicular to the red line and goes through the black dot. Okay, so in this case, this black dot is at negative 1, 3. And that is going to be my x1 and my y1. Okay, so now I need to find out what the slope of my red line is. Okay, and it is going to be negative 1 over 3. Okay, so my slope here is negative 1 over 3, but I'm going to need to do the opposite reciprocal slope. Okay, so my original slope is negative 1 over 3, but in order to get my perpendicular slope, my new slope is going to need to be positive. My 3 goes to the top, my 1 goes to the bottom. Okay, so in order to write the equation of this line, my m is going to be 3 or 3 over 1, whichever one you prefer. Okay, so y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, right? I have y minus 3 equals 3 times x plus 1. Okay, and if you continue this line with the slope of 3, this black dot, you can see that those intersect at an exact right angle. If you had a sheet of paper, you could put it in this corner right here, and that would give us an exact right angle. Okay, next, our black dot is at negative 3, 1. Okay, our slope of this red line is positive 1. Okay, the slope of the red line is positive 1 over 1. Now I'm going to need to flip it. It doesn't matter about the reciprocal as much as the negative. Okay, so my perpendicular line will be negative 1 over 1. So my equation is y minus 1, because my x1, y1 here. Y minus 1 equals negative 1 times x plus 3. Okay, so we would start at our point. A slope of negative 1 would look like that. You can see how that is a right angle. Okay, here I need it to go through my point, which is 1, 3. Okay, the slope of this red line, this is a vertical line, so it is going to be undefined. Okay, as we talked about in the examples, the opposite of undefined is 0. I need a horizontal line with a slope of 0 in order to write my equation. Okay, so I would have y minus 3 equals 0 times x minus 1. Okay, now let's look, just as a reminder, we have our slope guy. He looks like this, okay, with his zero mouth and his y sticking out. Okay, now if we were to simplify this, all of this stuff in these parentheses would get multiplied by 0. So everything in that parentheses would be 0. So we would end up with y minus 3 equals 0. If we added 3 to both sides, we would get y equals 3. Okay, y equals 3 is a horizontal line that goes through 3. Okay, and you can see this is a right angle here, and the most simplified way to write that is y equals 3. Okay, y equals 3. And that is how you write the equation of perpendicular and parallel lines.